And this is the one that I was really like, oh, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah, straight A student, but I'm friends with the cool kids. Following the rules and the rubric. Freestyle on the bus.
Turkey Bowl. You ready? What's the stat line going to be,
I'm
John?
excited.
What are you going to do? What's the performance going to be? We putting on a show?
Hopefully walking out of there with 2 ACLs intact and a couple of ankles still working so that way I can keep running, I think is the big goal. I'm going to hand it off to the people who actually play football. I'm a role player on this team. I've accepted that. And every great team needs great role players. So just get ready to see us in the chip.
Is your role code for coach, or is your role going to be within the white lines? Like, are they going to put you on the field, or what's going on here?
I would hope so, given my performance last year. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. I think like probably 7,000 QBR. I would just say like, I'm going to do whatever they think is best, but I'm out here to win. I'm a competitive guy. I'm going to go out there, compete, and we'll see what happens come game day, I think.
How do you feel that you had one of your teammates from last year stolen by Team Grippo?
Hurt. I'm hurt, definitely.
You're hurt?
Yeah. We'll see him on the field, though, and things will be settled. So
there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. You guys have any practices?
Not that I know of. As to whether or not they're there, who knows? But I have not been informed.
I think they had a couple practices without you.
I mean, they need it. I'm probably going to come in pretty good shape. So, yeah, we should be all right.
Good shape. Yeah, I don't know if good shape is what we're looking for here. I think we need some skill. We need some. You're not gonna get tired during this tournament. I'm pretty sure of that.
Changing direction may be a different story, but if I had to run in a straight line, I'm locked.
Yeah, just go balls, just straight go balls the whole time.
Yeah, right.
There we go. Nice. What else you got? Anything interesting happening in the world?
So do you know who Tadej Pogacar is?
No, I do.
Do you know who Michael Phelps and Michael Jordan, Babe Ruth are?
I am familiar with those 3 individuals, yes.
Yeah, so I think like you could refer to those 3 as the GOAT. If they are ranked here, Tadej Pogacar is maybe on another planet. He is the absolute best cyclist in the world, no doubt, greatest of all time. Someone just estimated his VO2 max at 96, Zach. That is the highest ever.
Wow. Do you hear that? Do you hear the applause? Do you hear the crowd just roaring right now?
I mean, hey, man, 96.
That is absolutely incredible. And yet nobody on this podcast or listening to this podcast cares, John. We've hit our quota. We are done with this whole endurance thing. The long distance, that is not our genre. That's not our area of expertise. I think it's amazing. I think there's definitely some people out there who are super excited for Tadej Gazpacho, however you say that last name. But it is not the audience that we have for this podcast. So I think we've hit our quota for the next couple of years, man. I don't think there's a single person who can who listens to our podcast who can put a reference to like that 96 VO2 max. I don't think that's understandable.
I mean,
what's your VO2 max though? I guess what's your VO2 max? Have you measured it in the exercise
calculated
science
off
lab?
a watch, so it's not exactly accurate. But my watch says it's 56.
Do they have an exercise science lab at Villanova?
I'm sure they do. I haven't been.
You could probably pay like $25 and go get tested, or just make friends with somebody who's. Do they have an exercise science major even there though?
I don't even think so.
You go to Akron if you wanted to.
Yeah, I could have done that. Yeah.
Yep. It's similarly in the same academic circle. Villanova, Akron. We're talking about the same here.
No, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Another thing I wanted to touch on though is so hypothetically, if you were to be on an NBA roster, like you know how the NBA is structured, you have the NBA and then you have the G League.
Yeah, but we're getting very hypothetical here. This is something I cannot put myself into those shoes. I can't imagine.
Yeah,
being in the
that's
NBA.
gonna be tough.
That's super good. Go ahead. I was 6 man on our varsity basketball team my senior year. I was not really allowed to shoot the ball, but I was a defensive nightmare. Go ahead.
Yeah, there you go. Well, so if you're in the NBA, you just started your first NBA game, and then your dad takes your roster spot and demotes you to the G League, you'd be living the life of Bronny James. Which I feel like personally, it's like, I don't even know how I'd begin to feel right there.
Yeah, but also like you're in the NBA, so I don't know. I get it. The context is different, but that's really hard to like be upset about the fact that like you're one of. It's so hard to make the NBA. Like making the NFL is extraordinarily easy compared to being an NBA player. It's just like I don't know. I don't know if
Can't
you
wait
can
to
be
clip
that
that.
upset
Making the NFL is extraordinarily easy.
compared to compared to being in the NBA. Like that's what I always tell people. Like I played Division I football, and like I'll use Austin or Bryce as an example. Like the fact that they played Division I basketball is much more impressive than me playing Division I football. I just think there's so much less roster spots. And you ask any football player, like for the most part, 99% of my teammates would have rather played basketball. They just weren't Division I basketball players, so they didn't go play basketball. So I think it's just, basketball. I think is the hardest sport to play at the highest level because you just have the most athletic freaks that exist in the world. They just like you look at Victor Wembanyama, it's like like that's
It's
what are you gonna
ridiculous.
do? What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be tough if your dad took your spot, though. That would be
Yeah, right?
pretty tough. If
I feel like I'd be a little upset personally, but if you're the GOAT, you do what you want.
I hope my dad takes my NBA roster spot one day, though.
Yeah, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure that's coming.
yeah. Ashwagandha.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think LeBron takes ashwagandha or no?
Before doing any of this research, I would have said no. After doing this research, I will leave that up to the end, and we'll see what conclusions we come up with. But I will say that this was one of the more rewarding research processes to go through in terms of actually having some answers and some changes to practices. But yeah, so
Yeah.
that's our question for today, Mr. John. Should we all or should anyone be taking ashwagandha? And honestly, going into this, had no idea whatsoever. Still, every single time I type ashwagandha, I have to triple check to make sure I spelled it right. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it right. I'm not sure if it's ashwagandha. Probably should have checked that before we hopped on a podcast. We're going to say it 1,000 times, but I'm going with ashwagandha because I don't think I could change it. And as I sat down to do this research, I know nothing about it, knew absolutely nothing. I just know that more and more athletes are starting to ask me my opinion about it, and some of them are taking it. So I was like, hey, we have to figure out what's going on here. And I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's dive in and find out what the people are saying. I told you kids are asking me about it, but I want to hear what the
Yeah.
world thinks from you, John.
Let's get into it. I think, honestly, from what I've seen, TikTok and Instagram Reels makes you think that, like, this is TRT. Like, this is going to get you jacked. This is going to make you think that, like, you can go be the next strongman, the next Arnold. Like, this is going to absolutely boost your, like, performance, specifically in the weight room. And that's hypertrophy, building muscle, and building strength like crazy. What I've seen that people claim is that this is also going to lower your stress and anxiety. I'm sure that you've come across this just researching it. People say that it like makes you emotionally dead. Like you start taking ashwagandha, there's all these jokes on Instagram where it's my girlfriend breaking up with me, but too bad I started taking ashwagandha 3 days ago. And this girl is crying on the phone and this guy's just sitting there stone faced. So that's a big like public perspective or perceptive or
Okay.
perception
I didn't
of
know that.
ashwagandha.
I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
and honestly, that's the way I thought of it was this thing's gonna boost my testosterone like crazy. It's gonna give me better sleep, insane muscle recovery. That's the way it's marketed at the cost of taking away like your emotional or increasing your emotional regulation to where you were just like a stone cold killer at all times. I also feel like people always market it as safe because it's like natural. Um, that's something I've seen a lot. A lot of
How many?
concerns that people. What are you saying?
Go ahead. I was going to just have like, is this something that's like commonly taken with amongst your friends? Is this something that like you've experienced a good amount of people kind of involved with, or like what's the hit rate here of ashwagandha right now?
I would say I've never taken it. I've never seen a benefit to taking it, but I know a lot of my buddies who lift constantly have taken it at one point or another. As to whether or not they're still on it, I'm honestly not sure. But I was asking a couple of my buddies at the gym earlier, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I tried it." And they all said that emotional regulation thing. Like, oh, I just felt like I had no emotion. I felt like I was flat. Um, but I didn't really hear much about the performance enhancing. So I'm excited to hear more about that. Um, but I mean, yeah, that's really what the public has been saying. I'm pretty excited to see what this data and science is going to back up or not.
Cool. Anything else we need to hit on with that?
I feel like we really hit it all. Something I'm pretty excited to hear about is whether or not this is actually like another thing people bring up is I have it here. Shoot. I scrolled away from it. Another thing people have here is that this is supposed to like, and we had touched on this a little bit, is supposed to boost your testosterone like crazy. I don't know if you ever get those Instagram ads, but it's like take ashwagandha now and testosterone levels rise. And they show you these charts that may be the most fake looking charts I've ever seen in my entire life. But I'm really excited to see kind of what the data has to do with that.
All right. So we'll segue from there then. We'll see, what does the science say? What does the data actually say here? Our four main questions that we're going to investigate today are: number one, is ashwagandha safe? Number two, is ashwagandha effective at reducing anxiety, enhancing mood, or reducing stress? Number three, is ashwagandha effective at improving sleep? And number four, is ashwagandha effective at improving performance? But before we get into that, we have to establish some background knowledge. We can't just go straight to the outcomes. We have to figure out, what in the world do we think ashwagandha is doing from a physiological level? In our last deep dive, which was on caffeine, we had a very singular mechanism of action that we had high certainty about how it worked. With ashwagandha, not so much. We do, however, have some thoughts. We have three main pathways that we think it has a physiological mechanism of action. The first one being the HPA axis. So the HPA stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. HPA axis is your body's main stress response system, which is essentially a command chain starting in your brain. And under normal conditions, here's kind of the process it goes through. First, a stressor happens. Your hypothalamus sends an alert to your pituitary gland. So both the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland are in your brain. The pituitary then releases a hormone, which is corticotropin releasing hormone, that tells your adrenal glands to release cortisol. So you go hypothalamus, contacts pituitary gland tells your adrenal glands, release cortisol. Cortisol is the main stress hormone. It floods your body with energy and heightens your focus to deal with the threat. This is what really jumpstarts that sympathetic response, gets your body into that fight or flight state. Once that threat is gone, the cortisol in your blood signals the brain to stop the alarm, acting as a system's off switch. So once that cortisol gets back up to your brain's like, okay, cool. The signal was sent. We know that we have what we need. We're going to dampen that system and we're going to stop releasing more cortisol now. This system, however, was designed to deal with stressors that are transient, like, not getting eaten by a bear. It's not something that you were dealing with all day, every day, like today's stressors. Today's stressors are normally prolonged and drawn out, like worrying if you're going to get offered that scholarship, or if you're going to pass that test, or if your girlfriend's going to break up with you, or whatever it may be. Our stressors are very different than, oh, shoot, I have to outrun that cheetah or I'm going to die, which probably not going to outrun that cheetah. Sorry.
Yeah, bad news for you.
Yeah. Okay. But that results in the HPA axis essentially never shutting down and constantly flooding you with cortisol. So we have this system that was designed for one set of circumstances in our environment that is now operating in a very different environment. Researchers think that an active component of ashwagandha, called withanolides, may reduce the sensitivity of the hypothalamus to stress. And so this all starts with the hypothalamus. With less stress sensitivity, so that hypothalamus doesn't have such a strong signal, it sends a weaker signal to the pituitary gland, which in turn sends a weaker signal to the adrenal gland, which ultimately leads to less cortisol being dumped into your bloodstream, which less cortisol means less fight or flight response, which means less stress. And so It is called an adaptogen, which is a relatively vague term that just refers to something that helps keep you a little bit more in a regular homeostatic environment. So that's the first mechanism of action that we propose is the HPA Axis Modulation, which again, we don't know if any of these are accurate. We don't know if these are 100% how this works. Like we know how caffeine worked. It lodges itself into those receptors and it blocks adenosine from doing its job. But this is more of these are our best guesses right now.
All right.
Okay.
So
Go
let me
ahead.
make sure that I have that straight. I just took 2 exams. Brain's a little wishy-washy right now. So what I'm hearing is that the hypothalamus is going to like hit that panic button, send that signal. Pituitary is going to spread that out. The adrenal gland is going to dump that cortisol everywhere. And the cortisol is what's supposed to be, or cortisol is supposed to calm us down.
The cortisol is going to increase your stress, it's going to increase your body's response to the stress. The cortisol is what it's a helpful hormone in getting energy into your body. So getting more glucose into your bloodstream so that way you have more energy available to you to be able to run away from that cheetah, run away from that bear, and do other functions throughout the body that are great for transient moments in time where you have to be able to perform at your peak. And so you want to kind of be in that fight or flight system on game day whenever you're in that game, because then you have the most amount of material or nutrients available to you. That is when we want to be in that fight or flight response. But cortisol, it doesn't calm you down. Cortisol's job is to just feed that fight or flight state.
Okay, got it.
All right. But yeah, so the way ashwagandha works in there is it just kind of dims down that hypothalamic signal at the beginning. It just kind of calms it down a little bit. So the whole response is weaker to begin with, which goes in line with what you were talking about with that, they feel a little bit flat type of deal, which is something we'll circle back to at the end.
Got it.
All right. The second mechanism of action that we are dealing with could be it's a GABA agonist. So GABA stands for gamma aminobutyric acid. GABA is the primary inhibitor neurotransmitter in the brain. A lot of big words there, but basically what that means is its primary job is to slow down neural activity. That's what the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter means. It's going to slow down all that neural activity. So researchers propose that with analytes in ashwagandha can bind to GABA receptors in the brain and mimic the effects of GABA itself. So that increased inhibition may lead the brain to feeling a little bit more calm, less anxious, and ultimately make it a little easier to fall asleep, which is something we're also going to look at.
Got it.
Any thoughts there, John?
So what I'm hearing is that if GABA's kind of telling us to slow down, hitting that brake, ashwagandha is also able to hit that same brake, slow everything down, bring in that calm.
Correct. Yep.
Got it.
That's
All
another proposed mechanism of action. And the last one here, and I'm not gonna lie to you, there's a bunch more mechanisms of action that are proposed out there. These are the main 3, and these are the 3 that have the strongest support to them right now. And this is outside my scope to be able to judge the accuracy of any of these mechanisms of action. So I'm just going with what the consensus really is. The last one is the antioxidant anti-inflammatory mechanisms. So free radicals and NF-kappa B are the key concepts here. So free radicals cause damage, and that damage flips the on switch for inflammation. Here's how it works. So free radicals are highly unstable molecules like tiny out-of-control wrecking balls bouncing around in your cells. So free radicals are these loose electrons that are just doing all kinds of damage within your system. To become stable, they crash into other molecules like your DNA and steal parts of them in a process called oxidation. This theft causes cellular damage, which we call oxidative stress. This damage is a major trigger that activates NF-kappa beta, which is a protein that acts as the main on switch for inflammation inside of your cells. So far, we have free radicals damage tissues through oxidative stress. Oxidative stress turns on the inflammation process through NF-kappa beta or kappa B. I don't know which one that is. I think it's just kappa B. But
looks like B.
Yeah. All right. Once. What was that? You just fart?
No.
I just heard a tooting noise. Maybe it was my dog below me here. My dog just farted. All right. I thought it was coming through the headphones, but maybe it wasn't. I guess I'll let you know in a little bit if I smell it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so once on, NF-kappa B travels into the cell's nucleus and tells your DNA to produce pro-inflammatory chemicals causing pain, swelling, and redness. So the inflammation process is starting to roll. Here's the catch, though. The process of inflammation itself creates even more free radicals as a byproduct. This creates a cycle where damage causes inflammation, inflammation causes more damage. Researchers propose that ashwagandha can break this cycle in two ways. Number one would be the withanolides can neutralize the free radicals directly, sacrificing themselves so the wrecking balls don't damage your cells. Okay, so that instead of those causing a lot of oxidative stress, the withanolides just kind of absorb those free radicals. It also appears to boost your body's own natural antioxidant enzymes, encouraging your cells to produce more of their own cleanup crew to handle the oxidative stress. The withanolides are also thought to physically block that NF-kappa B from going through its process. By preventing the on switch from being flipped, it keeps your cells from getting the signal to start pumping out those pro-inflammatory chemicals in the first place. So it can stop it at two spots. It can stop it by absorbing those free radicals and can stop it from causing the inflammatory mechanism to be turned on. Less oxidative damage means there's less reason to flip the inflammation switch, and blocking the switch itself stops the cycle from continuing. That one was a lot. What do we got? Any questions or any thoughts?
I was going to say, so if these free radicals are what's causing the damage, so ashwagandha is going to come in and take those out of the picture. Is that the right idea with this mechanism, or?
That's the first part. Yep. So it could do it by taking those free radicals out of the picture. And it can also do it by stopping the inflammation signal from happening once those free radicals have done their damage.
Okay. Got it.
Nope. All right. So now we're done with all the background stuff because that stuff's cool and all, but like, does it actually work? Most of the people here don't really care about how it works as long as you get the outcome that you're looking for and it's safe to do so. So remember, our 4 questions today are, is ashwagandha safe? Is it effective at reducing anxiety and stress? Is it effective at improving sleep? And is it effective at improving performance? To answer these 4 questions, I have 4 studies to work through. So I went through a lot of research, found the 4 best studies I could find. And then at the end, we'll form a cohesive narrative and I'll give my current stance. Are you ready to dive in, Mr. John?
Sir, yes, sir. Let's hear it.
Let's go. Okay, so the first one is a 2024 systematic review by Arumugam, effects of ashwagandha on stress and anxiety. So we're looking at stress and anxiety here. Our 3 questions, as always, are number 1, can I trust the results? Number 2, what did the study find? And number 3, can I apply this in my context? So we've got some new statistical numbers we're going to throw in here in a little bit. But before we do that, number 1, can I trust the results? Yes, mostly. It's a systematic review, relatively rigorous process per usual. I chose the highest quality studies, so you can trust the results of most of these studies for the most place. All of the studies included in this all of this studies included in this study were randomized control trials, and all of those trials had a placebo control. So we had a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized control trial for all of these, which is really high-quality evidence. The cons are varying methodological quality underlying the primary research, and so some of these studies were better performed than other ones. Some had very small sample sizes, some had incomplete data, and then we'll see here in a little bit, there was a lot of heterogeneity, which we'll dive into.
Right.
Second question, what did the study find? We found a significant reduction in stress. So remember, significance means that you can regularly expect a reduction in stress to be found. It doesn't tell us how big that difference was. For that, we need to look for effect size, but this does not have an effect size listed in this study. We had a mean difference. So a mean difference for stress of minus 4.72 on the perceived stress scale. A mean difference is not the same as an effect size. So they didn't report that for this systematic review, which means the context of the test itself is needed to determine the degree of how much this actually mattered or not. So we can't just say, oh, it was like with the Cohen's D we talked about last week. If it's between 0.2, if it's around 0.2, it's a small effect size. If it's around 0.5, it's a moderate, or around 0.8, it's going to be a large effect size. That's not standard from test to test to test to test if you don't have the effect size calculated. We just have the raw mean difference. And so we have to look at the test itself, which was the perceived stress scale. And so I looked up the MCID, which is the minimal clinically important difference for the perceived stress scale. So that tells us how much of a difference do you have to have on this test for somebody to actually notice the difference in their real life. So it's actually making a clinically important difference. And it seems to be, if this was a 0 to 40 scale, which is the most common perceived stress scale, that the MCID is likely between 2.5 and 4 points. And we had a mean difference of 4.72. So we had something that is going to have a clinically relevant improvement in somebody's life. So not a drastic, life-changing, they're on tranquilizers type of reduction in stress, but it's still a meaningful, clinically important difference in their life.
In
You got any
this
thoughts
study,
there?
I was going to say, so in this study, we're seeing an MCID of around 3, and that's out of a 0 to 40 scale.
The MCID would be 2.5 to 4, so that would be the minimally clinically important difference. So it's a subjective test. Basically, it's just a questionnaire about how much stress they perceive. And so if somebody's overall score goes down by about 3 points over the course of time, then that's something that, it's like, hey, that's actually not just noise. It's not just they answered the questions differently that day, or they interpreted the questions differently that day. That tells us that that's actually a clinically important difference. They are a less stressed individual at this point in their life.
Got it. And we're not seeing them turn into these stone cold rock zombies either.
You could, but that's going to come. Actually, we'll use that as a cliffhanger. Little cliffhanger there. I'll tell you when that's going to come. Just remind me to come back to that. We'll go over that in our summary. Okay, so the next thing in regards to the significant reduction in stress. So it's great. We had a significant reduction in stress. We also, we had an MCID of 4. A meaningful difference. So the effect size was meaningful, even though we didn't get an effect size calculated. We did have, however, high heterogeneity. And I promise, guys, this is the last actual in-depth explanation of a new statistical test we're going to do for today. We're going to be rolling faster after this. But heterogeneity is basically telling us, like, how different are the results from study to study. And so low heterogeneity is good because it tells us from study to study to study, you saw the same thing over and over and over and over again. So that tells us we can more reliably expect those results to be real. If you have high heterogeneity, that tells us we don't really know what we can expect. The results were all over the place. So we had high heterogeneity within this test, within this study, an I-squared value of 86% and an I-squared interpretation. So 25% is a low heterogeneity, 50% is moderate heterogeneity, and 75% is high. And so we're at 86%. So we're very high heterogeneity. And if you look at the reason why, the individual study effects range from minus 11.8 to minus 1.63. And we're talking of an MCID of 3 points. And so that's a large range of different outcomes. But they all showed improvement overall. And if we pull up the forest plot of this study, which I will do here real quick, because I have a new favorite. I like forest plots a lot, man. They're my new favorite graph.
While you're pulling that up, could you explain what that is? Because I have no idea.
A forest plot?
No clue.
Okay, yeah. So a forest plot is it's a graph that we went over last week. I don't know if I called it a forest plot last week, but it's a graph that shows all of the effect sizes and the confidence intervals of the individual tests. Okay, so we have the forest plot right here. And so you can see we have mean difference over here. Everything is to the left of the 0, which means everything showed a reduction in stress. And so that's good. That's part of the reason why we had significant results. But you can see we have this one outlier study where the 95% confidence interval bar goes all the way past any of the other high markers. So the low end of the 95% confidence interval is past the high end of any other study's 95% confidence interval bar. And so that's a big outlier study, which results in a large amount of heterogeneity, which tells us that the results are a little bit unpredictable at this point in time. But there's a really good reason why we have a large degree of heterogeneity in these studies. Putting you on the spot here, John, why do you think one of those reasons would be?
I would say it's because people perceive stress differently. So if, let's say we have the same thing happen, we both have a bear running at us. Me, being the elite athlete and human being that I am, I'm not going to be that stressed with that bear running at me. You may be a little more worried compared to me. So I like that perception of stress, I feel like is what explains that, but maybe I'm just thinking.
That would probably be controlled within the group allocation, though. So within the study, we have randomized groups, that should be controlled for, because it's not a person-to-person type of deal. This is more a study-to-study overall. And so the reason why I would expect a high amount of heterogeneity is because of the difference in dosages applied. So each of these studies had different dosages of ashwagandha, and so we're going to have different results based off the dose. We're talking like some studies had 150 milligrams. Some had 12,000 milligrams. Like we have very wide range of dosages. Yeah. And so the important part for the preliminary part of this is like, does it make a difference? And this study would say yes for stress. Okay. So now we're going to go through much quicker. I promise everybody. We went through heterogeneity. We went through MCID. We're going to be able to get rolling through this stuff now. So we also had in the study a significant reduction in anxiety. So mean difference of minus 2.19 on the Hamilton Anxiety Scale. And the MCID is around 2 to 3 points for the Hamilton Anxiety Scale. So we had likely a clinically meaningful difference in anxiety. Moderate heterogeneity, 41%. So not nearly as much variability in this study or in anxiety as there was in stress. We had a statistically significant reduction in serum cortisol levels. So we talk about cortisol being kind of the primary driver of the mechanism of action we were most likely concerned with, that HPA axis. So we had a statistically significant reduction in cortisol levels with a mean difference of minus 2.58. But here's why I don't love this study, John. They don't even give us the units of the serum cortisol levels. And so I don't know what minus 2.58 implies. And so if you look up serum cortisol levels, I can't really interpret it unless I know the units, because it's likely going to be in micrograms per deciliter. And a healthy person's peak cortisol levels are usually between 5 and 25 micrograms per deciliter. So if you're taking those down by 2.58 micrograms per deciliter, that would be a relatively meaningful difference. That would make that drop quite meaningful. Definitely. However, it could also be in nanomoles per deciliter, which peak between 140 and 690 nanomoles per deciliter, which would make a 2.58 point drop essentially meaningless. So I don't know if this is like an actually clinically meaningful drop in cortisol levels or not. So this one wasn't my favorite study overall, largely because of the lack of effect size being applied and the lack of units for the cortisol levels. However, we did get some results on adverse effects, and in total, 9 studies reported no adverse effects throughout the intervention. 4 studies reported some adverse effects, such as diarrhea, anorexia, nausea, abdominal pain. Sorry, I got a 3-year-old, guys. Words like that are just they're hitting in my house right now. They're funny.
I'm 21 years old, and poop is always funny. So
okay. And deranged liver and kidney function tests. So in total, like the safety side of things, it looks like ashwagandha is pretty safe. But you should be aware of adverse effects being reported and just kind of be on alert for them, especially for people with pre-existing gastrointestinal or hepatic conditions. So if you got some gut or liver issues existing, really just err on the side of caution with this stuff. And this is always a good time to mention that you should not take any of this stuff for medical advice for you or your athlete. This is all just for educational purposes only. Please make sure you consult directly with a healthcare professional. Now you can't sue us.
There you go.
Okay. Then I'll finish off this. Can I use the results in my context? The population was almost completely adults with a few 16 and 17-year-olds in there. So kind of, although I will say, when we go over all this stuff, we're largely talking about stress and anxiety. And I know you sports parents are stressed and anxious. And so I'm not just talking about teen athletes with this one. We're talking about the adults too. So for adults, yes. For the teens, not so much. All right, John. Thoughts on that study so far?
I mean, it sounded good at the beginning, but then once you kind of get down into the nitty gritty of it, looking at these units definitely makes it a little skewed as to the actual effect. But I'm still holding out hope that LeBron could be taking ashwagandha. So I'm leaning more towards it now.
Maybe he is and Bronny isn't, and maybe that's why he got demoted to the
Maybe
G
that's
League.
the problem. Yeah. He's a mellow guy.
All right. So we'll go on to our next study. This one also looks at stress and anxiety. This is one by Arcagand and others in 2022. Again, did not pronounce that correctly, but I gave it the good old college try. Can I trust these results? Yes, mostly. Basically all the same stuff as the last one. For the pros, everything looks good. Only RCTs, the SS bias, they did all that stuff. Cons, varying quality of underlying primary research. Overall, yeah, for the most part, these are well done studies. Okay, but what did the study find? Significant reduction in stress. So they had a standard mean difference of minus 1.75. And so now this is where we can go back to the same effect size stuff that we were looking at last time. So minus 1.75 with 0.8 being huge or being large. That means 1.75 is massive. This is a huge reduction in stress overall. However, we did have high heterogeneity, 83.1%. But interestingly, though, the heterogeneity disappeared in studies performed on healthy subjects. So when they subgrouped this out and they only looked at healthy subjects, the heterogeneity disappeared, but the effect size remained high. So interesting subnote there. And then it seemed that there was a nonlinear effect, a significant nonlinear effect on stress at doses ranging from 300 to 600 milligrams per day. Wow. Milligrams per day. I was stuck on the deciliters from the last one. Which basically means the sweet spot for stress is going to be in that 300 to 600 milligrams per day range. For anxiety, we have a standardized mean difference of minus 1.55, which again is a very large effect size. Healthy people 40 years or older, and supplementation doses greater than or equal to 600 milligrams per deciliter. Why am I saying deciliter again, John? Milligrams per day had the greatest benefit. So healthy people, again, similar to what we found in stress above, people 40 years or older, which is going to be sports parents, and supplementations greater than or equal to 600 milligrams per day showed more benefit. High heterogeneity with anxiety, so 93.8%, very large heterogeneity. And one of the reasons for this is just a massive outlier on the forest plot. Now, while I bring that up there, John, would you mind riffing on something or asking some questions?
Totally.
Doing a little dance, something along those lines?
Basically, what I'm getting from these researchers is that it works probably depending on the dose, depending on the person, depending on the study. But overall, it does work.
That would be a pretty accurate conclusion thus far, but will that change as we work through the rest of it?
I'm going to say, yep.
So we've got the forest plot here, and you can see this is the 0 line with things on the left side being a good thing because that means we are reducing anxiety. You have some that are not below the 0 line, but for the most part, pretty consistently to the left of the 0 line, except for this one all the way out here. If you look at this low end of the 95% confidence interval, and then you look at the rest of them, like this is so far outside of everything else in this test. It's just a massive outlier, which results in a huge amount of heterogeneity. So this actually, the heterogeneity would be decreased if this study didn't show such good results. So overall, it's like the heterogeneity isn't really a flag for us because it just showed that one test was so much better than the others. It's not like it was one was good, one wasn't good type of deal that resulted in high heterogeneity, you know?
All right. Yeah.
Okay. And this one, the study found a favorable nonlinear dose response effect on anxiety up until 12,000 milligrams per day. 12,000, which basically means the more the better, up till 12,000 milligrams per day. However, I don't want you to go and dose yourself with 12,000 milligrams per day quite yet, Mr. Tropeano, because the vast majority of those studies were significantly below that. I'm talking that 300 or 150 to 600 milligrams per day. We had one study that had 12,000 milligrams. And so it's like, yeah, you had a favorable nonlinear dose relationship up until that point, but we don't have enough data to say if 12,000 milligrams is appropriate at all. So it's kind of a one of those situations of real data being used to paint a fake story there. So I would just be hesitant with 12,000 milligrams at this point in time.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah. So can I use the results in my context? The population is all 25 to 48 years old. So you sports parents, absolutely. This one's right up your alley. Okay. And I do want to go a little bit faster through these next two, or at least this next one. But before I do that, do you have any thoughts, any questions on the last one?
I was going to say that we're seeing all these large effect size on stress and anxiety, but there's a lot of noise. So I feel like how are we supposed to sift through this noise without ignoring like that large signal that we're seeing?
That's a really good point. And that's we're going to get into at the end here with what I'm calling the Attia categories, which is something I stole from him and how he kind of buckets the quality of evidence for different interventions at this point in time. And so we'll put a little pin in that one and we'll cycle back to that all the way at the end. And guys, if I ever say, hey, we're going to cycle back to that, and you just want to avoid all these cliffhangers, because I know some of this data can be nuanced and annoying, there are show notes. Just go down to the show notes, find the time that you want to go to, and just click on that. I will not be offended if you skip out on hearing my dog fart or John laugh at diarrhea jokes, or you don't want to hear what heterogeneity means. If you just want to get to the good stuff, that'll be listed in the show notes. Just go down to my stance in the summary. Okay. But the next study, effects of ashwagandha on sleep. Again, you can trust the study. If you're curious about all the pros and cons, just go to our newsletter on the website, and you can see that there. I'll link that in the show notes. The big con here, though, is the total sample size is only 400 participants, so pretty low for a systematic review and meta-analysis. And so, obviously, more research needs to be done, which that resulted in pretty high imprecision and consistency. What did the study find? A standardized mean difference of 0.59. So a significant improvement in overall sleep, with the effect size being 0.59, which is above a moderate effect size, which is, if you're someone struggling with sleep, that matters a lot. The beneficial effects were found to be more prominent in specific subgroups, which were adults who have insomnia, those getting a treatment dosage of greater than or equal to 600 milligrams per day, and those receiving treatment for a duration of greater than or equal to 8 weeks. That's the second time
get rid of 600 milligrams.
Yeah, it's crazy when it starts to come up consistently, huh?
Right?
Well, is that maybe some of that signal and the noise that you were talking about?
Who's to say?
All right. Can I use these results in my context? Population was all adults. So kind of, guys, we're going to go week in and week out when it comes to most of this stuff, especially any sort of supplementation intervention like this. We're not going to find a lot of research on adolescents. And so that's just always going to be the case. Now, when we get to some of our different topics that we go in the next couple of weeks, it'll be more adolescent-based research. Okay. Last one. And this is the one that I was really like, oh, okay, this is interesting. This one looked at performance, so physical performance by Bonilla and others in 2021. Can I trust the results? Yes. Systematic review employed a Bayesian meta-analysis, which is just a fancy meta-analysis for those that for studies that have like larger uncertainty or heterogeneity. which, we've come to many times, largely because of the changes in dosage from study to study. The only big limitation, or one of the big limitations, I should say, in this study was that just low number of studies. There wasn't a lot of stuff looking at physical performance at this point in time. And so when you have a study that just encompasses all of physical performance as a systematic review and meta-analysis, instead of being like a particular, like, does it improve strength or does it improve cardiovascular? Like, that just tells us we just don't have a plethora of evidence right now. But what did the study find? Pooled effect size was a significant improvement in strength and power with a pooled effect size of 0.67. So this is a Hedges G, which is the same scale as Cohen's D for the effect size. So the same numbers, 0.2, 0.5, 0.8. We can apply them here. So the Bayesian model suggests ashwagandha is very likely to be meaningful on strength and power related variables. So they looked at like 1 rep max squat. They looked at some jump numbers. Again, we have a very low number of studies on this, but even though we have a low number of studies, we have uncertainty, we have heterogeneity, there was still a 98.3% probability that, like, you're going to have some meaningful effect size whenever you take ashwagandha and measure strength and power numbers, which is, I was not expecting at all. This was out of left field for me.
Yeah, for something you can buy over the counter, I'm pretty shocked to hear this. Like, you can just go get this and all of a sudden, boom, jumping higher, lifting more.
Yes, maybe. Okay, so low heterogeneity in this one. So for the strength and power, that's good. They use diamond ratio, which is different than I-square, but still a way to measure heterogeneity. So for our interpretation values for that, if you have a diamond interpretation of 1, then that means there's no heterogeneity, which means everything was the exact same. So 1.0, 1.5 is moderate heterogeneity, 2 and greater than 2 is high heterogeneity, and we have a 1.11 diamond ratio, so pretty low. Here you and your endurance stuff, things,
Mm-hmm.
you and Mr. Gaspacho from earlier, they have found a significant improvement in cardiorespiratory fitness. So the pooled effect size was very large, 1.89, and the model suggests the probability of the effect size being greater than 0.2. So if we ran this study over and over and over again, if we had some effect size, meaning any effect size whatsoever, is absolutely high. They say absolutely. They use the word absolute, meaning 100%. So they guarantee that if you repeated the study over and over and over again, then you would have improvements in cardiorespiratory fitness to some level in some way, shape, or form. They put it at 100%. You don't see that number very often. So,
Yes, sir.
yeah. The heterogeneity in this was also big, but we've talked about before why that can be the case. They did exclude outliers in some of this stuff. I go, if you want to see the exact numbers, I pull all this stuff out in the newsletter. But diamond ratio 3.74 before excluding outliers, so very high. But they excluded outliers that had even better results than the other ones. The diamond ratio was 1.41, so a moderate heterogeneity. And then fatigue and recovery, pooled effect size was again very large. Probability of effect size being greater than 0.2 if we repeated this, very high, 99.9%. Again, with high heterogeneity, though, 1.89 after excluding the outliers. So, this one blew my mind a little bit. I do want to put a big asterisk here, though. Can I use the results in my context? We don't have answers to the other variables that can manipulate the outcomes with these people. So, we know these were all healthy adults in this study. But were they athletic adults? Were they physically active adults? Were they already getting enough sleep? Or did the fact that they just took ashwagandha, got better sleep, and that resulted in better performance? Like, was this a proxy measure? Was one of our other things that we looked at in the study the thing that actually led to the better results? Were they previously overstressed and then taking the ashwagandha improved stress levels, which results in better physical performance? And so we don't know right now. And that's something that we're going to need more research to figure out and really parse that out and have better control over those variables with more specific and niche studies. But regardless, man, like, we've got like just like data that I was just not expecting, extraordinarily strong.
I know. I mean, this is definitely starting to see how one TikTok and gym bro read 1/4 of a study and immediately started pumping this thing out everywhere. Because you see stuff like this, and it's pretty straightforward to see. Like, if this is going to improve my performance in whatever way that, even though there's so many asterisks and variables, like, yeah, why not tell everyone to take it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's obviously we have to be able to parse out between marketing and true scientific effect, but like I was really, really surprised with ashwagandha as a whole. So circling back, I want to sum up what's actually important here. So we went through all the deep dives, all the interest, or all of the statistical numbers, all the statistical tests. What is actually important here, though? And for those of you who just wanted to skip all the meat and potatoes and just wanted to get that sweet, sweet dessert, get your answer. You click that part in the show notes that said, just jump right here. Here's what's actually important. Number one, we have strong reason to believe that ashwagandha supplementation reduces stress. Number two, we have strong reason to believe that ashwagandha supplementation reduces anxiety. Number three, we have some reason to believe that ashwagandha supplementation improves sleep. Number four, we have some reason to believe that ashwagandha supplementation improves physical performance. Number five, we have minimal reason to be concerned with safety of ashwagandha supplementation. And I want to jump into something that wasn't included in our studies earlier, but it's something that is important to dive a little bit deeper into safety. There was a 2025 narrative review that showed 6 cases of liver injury that were attributed to ashwagandha supplementation that they could find have been documented. So this was a narrative review that looked at everything. They only found six cases of liver injury attributed to ashwagandha. All cases had a similar pattern with jaundice and other symptoms, which occurred 2 to 12 weeks into supplementing with ashwagandha or ashwagandha-containing supplements. Those dosages were between 450 and 1,350 milligrams per day. All cases were reversible, with liver tests normalizing after 1 to 9 months after cessation of supplementation. And although most research indicates that ashwagandha supplementation is safe and tolerable, more data is needed to evaluate safety of higher doses or longer periods of supplementation, especially regarding its impact on hepatotoxicity or liver damage, more simply. So, the sixth thing that's actually important here, we have no information on the long-term effects of ashwagandha. The longest supplementation protocols measured in any of these studies were 6 months in one study and then 3 months in 3 studies. And number 7, it seems that root extract is more rich in bioactive molecules than whole leaf extract, but this is really uncertain right now if that has an impact on the outcomes. All right. Any thoughts on what's actually important here before I put the nail in the coffin with my final stance?
No, I think we're ready to hear it.
Okay. My stance. Should we all be taking ashwagandha? If someone, 1, struggles with stress and anxiety, 2, is near physical maturity, 3, takes around 600 milligrams per day, 4, and cycles 6 weeks on and 2 weeks off as a hedge against the long-term unknowns, then it seems likely that it will be helpful. Other than that, there isn't enough data to warrant any risk. So I want to circle back to 2 of those things. The first one, the cycle 6 week on and 2 weeks off, is an entirely me thing that I just added in there because of as a way to hedge against the long-term unknowns. It might actually be something that is counterproductive and reduces the efficacy of the ashwagandha. You would probably have to experiment with that yourself and see if that's something that you lose the benefits or what changes there. But I would probably start out cycling in some way just as a hedge, because we don't have any studies where they supplemented for more than 6 months in a row, and we just don't know about the long terms. And so that's something that has no research evidence whatsoever, is the cycling. That's just a me thing thrown in there. And number 2, the thing I wanted to mention, you talked a lot about how it made people emotionless. It took away all their emotion. They probably aren't somebody who would benefit from ashwagandha in the first place. if you're not somebody who struggles with stress and anxiety, this probably isn't a supplement that you need to be taking. It likely is those physical performance metrics probably are secondary to the improvements in stress, anxiety, sleep quality, anything along those lines. I can't say that for sure, but that's my current hypothesis I'd be operating with. So my guess is the gym bros you were talking to who became emotionless probably aren't the most stressed and anxious dudes in the world, who aren't really struggling with all that stuff. And they took them from a baseline of normalcy down to a baseline of below normal stress and anxious response, because you want to feel stress and anxiety in some way, shape, or form. There's a reason they exist. But if you are somebody who has pathological or heightened stress and anxiety, then ashwagandha might be something that just brings you down to a normal, regular baseline.
Right. So the main benefits of ashwagandha are more on this mental like health side compared to getting jacked, PRs in the gym. This is going to make me lift more, jump higher, run faster.
As of right now, that would be my stance. Yes, it does not seem based on, and even if we go back to those mechanisms of actions, the hypothetical physiological mechanisms of actions that we have HPA axis modulation, which is just ultimately going to reduce in less cortisol, which isn't going to be something that's like directly increasing the amount of muscle tissue that you are going to be creating or anything like that. Obviously, indirect effects can be there. A GABA agonist, which is something that's entirely a neurotransmitter response. And then the one that might be a little bit more direct is the antioxidant anti-inflammatory mechanisms. And so if we reduce the amount of free radicals and improve the inflammation process, then that can, maybe have a little bit more muscle growth efficacy. But in the long run, it seems like the biggest bang for your buck is going to be on stress and anxiety. And I would be kind of right now erring on the side where like any physical performance improvements, even though they are real and they do exist, most likely based off the study and the limited data we have right now, it's probably also coming from those same mechanisms of actions, which are, improving stress, reducing anxiety, which obviously is also going to improve performance if you're able to tap into that parasympathetic response more and have more effective recovery sessions,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, got it.
and you get higher quality sleep, which obviously sleep is whenever all the real magic happens.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to go into the Attia categories. I don't know what he calls these, but I'm going to start calling them just the Attia categories every time we go over them, because we're going to include these in every study or every podcast that we do. And you've probably noticed that the answer to these questions is almost never a simple yes or no. It's not like, does it work? Yes, absolutely. Or does it work? No. It's usually messy. There's a lot of bullet points I include below this about if you're someone who has blankety blank, 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 then blank. And so that's because science is messy. Truth is not as binary as we wish it were. So to help us stop guessing and start categorizing, I'm adopting a framework that I think was developed by Peter Attia. I think he mentioned that he created it. I could be wrong, but I'm attributing to him regardless. It emphasized that in science, proven is not binary. It is a spectrum of confidence and certainty. Moving forward, I will be using these 5 categories to grade the interventions we discuss, ensuring we know the difference between high quality science and clever marketing. The first one is proven. I'll actually go through them all quickly. Proven, promising, fuzzy, noise, nonsense. So proven being interventions that are supported by robust, reproducible human data where the probability of them being ineffective is near zero. So this would be something like creatine, whey protein, strength training. Like, we know to a very high degree of certainty that these are meaningful interventions that make a difference. We have so much data on all of those that we know that they do something. They are proven entities. After that, we have promising. So these are treatments backed by a strong mechanistic logic. They might be backed by animal data, or they might be even backed by early human data that looks effective, but lacks definitive long-term human trials. So this is right where I would put ashwagandha right now. We have a mechanism of action that we can propose. I believe there was animal data. I didn't really look into that. We clearly have early human data that looks effective, but we just don't have long-term human trials. We don't have the sample sizes that we need. We don't have the large amount of different studies from different populations of the world, from different universities with different researchers, all coming to the same conclusions with similar dosages that we need to be able to bump this category up to the proven threshold. It looks very promising, but we can't give it proven right now. The next category down would be fuzzy. So these are topics where data is inconsistent. It might be contradictory. It can be confusing. It makes it impossible to determine clear benefit or clear harm right now. So that's kind of the middle ground. The next one is noise. These are really hyped up interventions where the signal is too weak to form a conclusion because the evidence relies mostly on anecdotes, theory, or low quality studies. And so this is something that's kind of the opposite, the juxtaposition against promising. It's like, hey, we can't say it's nonsense, but it's probably nonsense right now. We just don't have enough evidence to clearly throw it into the nonsense bucket. And nonsense, these are approaches that have been rigorously tested and proven not to work despite continued popularity and marketing. And again, to repeat, I'm going to put ashwagandha squarely in the promising category right now.
Got it. All right, Zach, now that we've gone through all the meat and potatoes, let's get into a little bit of the fun stuff here with what people think about ashwagandha. And now that we just went into all that deep dive, what we now know about ashwagandha, and we can kind of bust some of these myths. So the first one that I think you see everywhere is that ashwagandha works instantly. You're going to take one gummy and all of a sudden you are an absolute monk. You're this stoic beast. Realistically, that's not how it works. This is not like emotional Advil. Ashwagandha is a slow burn. You don't take it at 2 p.m. and all of a sudden by 3, you feel nothing. You're not like this super, super relaxed human being. We saw that backed up in the studies. And I believe the timeline that we saw was 2 to 6 weeks of daily use around that 600 milligram range.
I want to jump in there because that's something I meant to mention earlier. I want to mention every week we have something that could be in gummy form. I remain highly skeptical of of supplements in gummy form. It is just really difficult to keep the bioactive ingredient active whenever you are heating it and manipulating it into that gummy form. And so there's a good chance if you're taking an ashwagandha supplement that's in gummy form, you're actually taking something that isn't biologically active and might be doing nothing. And so unless you have evidence from a third-party lab that has showed that the active ingredient is still active in the gummy that you are particularly taking, I would steer clear of the gummies. Just take a capsule. I would recommend always taking something that's NSF certified for sport or Informed Sport certified if you're an athlete as well. Go ahead.
The next myth I wanted to dive into is that because ashwagandha is natural, that automatically means that it's safe. We touched on this a little bit, but people tend to believe that, oh, it's a plant. It grows in the ground. I could grow it in my garden. I don't actually know if you grow it in your garden, but hypothetically you could. So it has to be harmless. Realistically, the way I like to think about it is that poison ivy is natural too, but you probably shouldn't go eating that. Just because it's natural does not always mean that it's safe. This means that marketing kind of got really lazy and said, oh yeah, it grows in the ground. It can't be bad. But as we talked about, when you're taking ashwagandha,
You've never eaten poison ivy before?
Me?
You've never eaten
Typically,
poison
no.
ivy? Why not?
Have you? Is this like a go-to thing for you?
Yeah, it's
something
delicious.
in Frasier, maybe?
Yeah, that's what we do in Fayette County, big dog. No, I'm just kidding. But no, it's a good point. Go ahead.
I was lost there for a second. But really, what ashwagandha can do, as we talked about, is it can really mess with that GI tract, especially as we're starting to get up into these higher dosages that maybe you're getting pushed on social media. But it shouldn't be anything crazy, especially if you're implementing that cycling thing, which we just talked about, that 6 weeks on to 2 weeks off, to avoid those long-term effects that we don't totally know about yet. The next myth that I wanted to look at, which we've touched on ad nauseum at this point, is that more equals better. This is not the case at all. What we've seen in almost every study that we just looked at was that 600 milligram range seems to be the absolute perfect range. Anything else, you're just trying to find a wonder pill for relaxation, and that's really not something that's going to work. All you're going to do is find a wonder pill to get to the bathroom really quickly. 24/7.
A lot of bathroom jokes here today.
Yeah, I know, but I realized that's the big safety thing with it, is everything that I saw
Yeah.
was the GI issues.
Yeah, no, GI issues, hepatotoxicity, yeah, for sure. Very cool, man.
Yeah, a lot of poop talk today.
A lot of poop. Didn't expect that going into it.
Yeah, me neither, honestly. Expecting to
Anything
keep
else
it
to
GI.
add?
I think the last one to talk about would be those emotional effects. I think it's what we talked about. We can definitely see those effects to where you're going to become calm, but in your average human being, this really is not going to turn you into that emotional zombie, at least from what we've seen today.
Yeah, it just depends on your starting point. It's going to basically it's going to bump you down a little bit, most likely from a stress and anxiety level. And so if you're somebody who's already at a normal level of stress and anxiety, you don't need to be bumped down from that, and it might take you down into a level that is, borderline pathologically underwhelming from an anxiety and stress standpoint. But if you're somebody who has heightened stress and anxiety, it's going to bump you down to a normal level. So you just have to be self-aware. You don't have to take it just because your bro's taking it. Any supplement you put in your body, anything you put in your body, you should have a rationale for why you're doing it. You shouldn't supplement. There's not just a list of supplements everybody should be taking. But if you're somebody who is high stress, high anxiety, which most of the parents who listen to this probably are going to be. Most of the kids who listen to this probably aren't going to be. Most of these kids are, there are some who are relatively high anxiety, relatively high stress. But obviously that's something that kind of exacerbates whenever you have kids. And so it just depends on what your starting point is, if it's going to turn you into that emotional zombie or not. Yeah. I'll tell you one thing, man. I'm going out. I'm going to buy an ashwagandha supplement right after this. We're going to see if it anecdotally makes a difference here. Yep.
Yeah, so let me know. Let
I
everyone know.
will. We'll report back.
I love it.
All right. Well, we took up a lot of your time today. I appreciate you guys listening. Let's wrap it up with a couple of important things. Number one, this newsletter and podcast is completely free. We spend many hours each week researching, writing, illustrating, recording, editing, and uploading. The best way you can support it and allow it to continue is to share it with people you know. You can send them to gtperformance.co/neuter.
Wow.
gtperformance.co/newsletter, and they can subscribe there, or you can just share this episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and they can subscribe there. Everything in these newsletters, podcasts, social media, and on our website is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice for you or your athlete. Please consult directly with a healthcare professional. Thank you so much for your help in spreading the word about athlete development, and until next time, go be great out there.
Yeah, straight A student, but I'm friends with the cool kids. Yeah, straight A student, but I'm friends with the cool kids. Following the rules and the rubric.